Okay. So again, we're just going to look at this one piece at a time and just kind of animate or just sort of clean up the animation one curve at a time. And so luckily I can sort of pop back into my graph editor here. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the pendulum here and I'm just going to go ahead and create an animated, an editable motion trail just so we can see what the curve looks like now. Now we know what we wanted the curve to look like, right? And we may tweak that a little bit. It doesn't have to be exactly what we have there, but we kind of know the idea we were going for. So if it, with the box selected, I go to Animate, Create Editable Motion Trail, and we can kind of see now what our motion trail is looking like. And it's not exactly what we had started off wanting, right? So we know here, let me just kind of tweak this a little bit, and I may just be able to change this a little bit in the curves, right? Maybe I don't want it to go exactly like that anyway. But I'm able to do something like that. Maybe something like that. And maybe I don't want that piece to hit quite so hard. And then here, maybe I still want it to continue to be overshooting just a little bit. Okay, so that's maybe a little bit more of what I was going for. I don't really like that it goes off screen there. So I can always pull back just a touch if we want. Something like that. And then maybe here we didn't have to dip quite so low or go quite so high. And so maybe that's the curve I want. And of course this isn't perfect. We're still going to do a little tweaking on it to make this curve more perfect. But let's kind of look at that now. So still got that little dip in there, but we'll fix that in the curves. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this animated motion curve now. Come on. And I can do that just by selecting the curve and hitting delete. And so now I'm going to do most of my work in my graph editor here. So we're going to talk first about our translate Z, because that's our forward and back, right? If we make adjustments to our translate Z, we'll see that that's what we're editing, and we'll see that if we make adjustments to our translate Y, we're editing the up and down. Translate X, we try not to do too much to in this animation. So let's just kind of play with this a little bit first with the translate Y and Z. And so, you know what, just so you can see for visualization, I'll go ahead and leave the editable motion trail on there. And so let's look at translate Z as our forward and back motion. Right? So I can click this button to frame it up. And I can see first thing is it's kind of easing out of there, and I don't know if I wanted it to start that way. I kind of want it to seem like it's coming into frame at a pretty quick speed. So I can do that, and then just kind of adjust my curves to fit that, right? And so I'm just shifting keys around, and the curve's going to start to look a little less attractive as we go. So we have it coming in a little faster now. And then it kind of speeds up right here, or I want it to speed up right here. And then here's where I want it to slow down. So it actually starts slowing down a little earlier than I want. So I'm actually going to move this here a little bit like this. And you'll see what that's doing to the curve. Okay. And so it does change directions there, and I'm happy with that. But I think maybe it starts to go back a little too quick. Okay. And then we have this issue here where it feels like it just kind of stops, and we can see why. It's because those are almost flat. So a way we can fix that is we can actually just add another keyframe up here. So I can go to Keys, Add Key Tool, just click here and insert one. You can kind of see I can, if I go in here and look at this curve a little bit better, I'm actually just building that arc in there. So that's not what I wanted to do. Just see I'm kind of making that arc happen. And then the same here, like I want this to kind of just ease in a little and just kind of settle into that position there. Okay, so that's just by animating or editing the forward and backward motion. So now we can also look at the up and down. Okay, we can see that there's a couple of little issues in there. So with this, if we watch it, it starts up, and then it kind of flattens out there, and that's one of the things I want to change. Is I want it to overshoot that a little bit. I want it to go up and then start settling downward. And so I can go in here again, keys, add key tool, middle mouse. I have to select the curve first and then a middle mouse click. You can see that I'm actually adding a little bit more of that curve up here. You can see that as we adjust it, we can make that sort of peak up a little bit more if we wanted to. Okay, so we get this, it goes up, and then it kind of dives down and changes directions here, and then starts to swoop back up. So let's play with that just a little bit and see. Just by adjusting this curve, you'll see that it kind of changes the way it goes in and out of that. And so overall, I'm not too disappointed with that. I think that feels pretty good. Now when we go up to the top, that curve, I'm just going to adjust it a little bit. I think it can go a little higher. And then I also think it can get lower a little earlier. And so again, I'm just going to add another key. Kind of make that dip happen. And now when I do that, it maybe changes a little bit of how I feel about that curve right here. I mean, does that come back in there too sharp? Should it actually kind of puff out a little bit more like that? And so if so, I can put here and just kind of, I'm just inserting another key there and kind of adjusting that. And the last little thing I want to do is maybe consider if there's a tiny, tiny dip right in there as it comes back up. So you see that I'm getting this like swoop into there. Okay. Now keep in mind, all I'm editing right now is the translate curves. I'm not animating any of the rotation. So let's see. I think it pops up a little too far right there. I think that it dips down and then just pops up a little too fast. So some of that may be timing. Some of it may be how far the translate Y actually goes up. So maybe it's more like this that we need. A little bit of this to kind of shift the way this motion happens. And let's see. Yeah, maybe it needs to be a little bit more like that. Let's see how that feels. I am going to just overall shift some keyframes. I feel like that there, like from here to there, just happens a little too quickly. And so I'm just going to go ahead and extend this out to like 75 and just grabbing everything, just going to shift, just going to make that happen just a touch slower just so we get a little bit more of that. Okay. So now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the rotation of this control, which is really just the rotate X. Okay, so if we look at rotate X, we can realize, let's just try to interpret what this curve means first. If I grab this and move it, you'll see that up rotates it backward and down rotates it forward. Okay, so that's just something we kind of have to keep in mind, that as it's coming in here, it's rotating forward, right? It's starting to rotate forward in this first little section here. And so we can decide if we want to adjust that a little bit. Get that. And so it's diving forward, but now it starts to tip back up. And I'm not sure I'm ready for it to do that. So I'm actually going to pull this a little further. And then I'm actually going to, considering adding another keyframe down here. So what it feels like is happening is it continues to lean forward just for a few more frames and then sort of pops up. Okay, so now this pops up, but it kind of flattens here. And that means it sort of just suddenly stops rotating backwards. And I think that that's part of the reason why this feels a little hitchy right there. So I'm actually just going to carry that on through a little bit. And then this rotates back and kind of flattens out. But again, it flattens out. I just wanted to keep going through, something like that. So let's see how that feels. It's not bad. So now, this is a little bit of a trick. Someone taught this to me once. Is that sometimes your rotations happen after your translations. So for example, the object starts moving up here kind of quickly, and the platform is rotating with it. But maybe that rotation is actually happening because of the object moving upward. And so if that's the case, then maybe it wouldn't happen until a frame later. So I'm actually going to do is I'm going to grab all of these keyframes and I'm just going to offset them one frame later. Let's see if that looks any better. It's looking good. I think I'm going to go back to my translates one more time here, because I think it's this dip right here that's causing some issues. Let's go ahead and show our motion trail again. I just feel like it's not dipping deep enough, and then it starts to climb kind of slowly. So I think what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to try adding... Oh, what did I do? Adding a keyframe here, holding it down a little longer, and that way it sort of pops up right here at the end. Let's see how that feels. That may not do it. Nope, I'm not happy with that. So I want to undo that, and actually what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to trim some of this time right through here out. Like that's just taking too long to go up there. So let me hide that motion trail. I'm just going to select all these controls, and I'm just going to middle mouse click, shift middle mouse click, drag, and just sort of tighten this up just a little bit, just to make that motion happen a little faster. Okay. Now we got that in there, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through. I think that this could be a little bit more stable. We could continue tweaking with it a little bit. There's a chance that maybe it tilts back too far here or something. I don't know. This. So I mean we can keep polishing on this and just making it look exactly the way we want it to. Maybe something like that. But that's the issue. I bet this needs to happen a little earlier. There we go. And that's not bad. So I'm kind of happy with how that's looking. But of course the pendulum looks like crap, right? Like we just really need to polish that up. We just have like just a few keyframes in here, hopefully to describe this, and it's really not. So we're going to revisit some of these keyframes, and just make sure that they're still doing what we want them to do. So we know that in this next few keyframes, the pendulum's going to start to dive. So I'm actually just going to kind of build some of this S shape already happening into it here. Okay, and I'm going to actually go back to our first keyframe. I'm just going to loosen that up a little bit too, just because I'm not, I mean, even though I don't see it, I'm not liking how it's kind of coming into the screen. Okay, so it's this section here that, okay, I think I'm wrong. I think I need to go in here and actually make this one dragging downward a little bit more. Maybe a little bit more like this. And that way, when we get this dive down, it kind of whips up. Now, the problem here is it's already starting to rotate forward here. And I don't want that. I want it to kind of hold off and hit it here on this pose. And I think that I can actually sort of build a little bit of that into this pose. So I'm just going to add a new key pose, and this is just on the pendulum pieces, and I'm just going to kind of continue to drag that back, right? And so let's see how that feels. So now that feels a little bit sharper, right? And so because I did that, now this one doesn't feel quite as strong, so I can actually overshoot that one a little bit more if we want to. There we go. And then this one needs to kind of overshoot it even more as well. Maybe a little bit something like that. And then got this. This pose here just feels weak, right? Like that's so blah. So let's kind of have it dragging a little bit more from this previous pose here. And then there. And then we can actually take this on out if we want to sort of a logical end. Even if we wanted to add just a touch more motion on this thing, just to kind of give it a place to go. Let's see how that feels. Right. And that can be kind of where the pendulum settles to a stop. So we'll kind of just clean that pose up a little bit, maybe something like that. Okay, now the things that are missing now is I want to go ahead and kind of build in some of my drag. Like that's nice there, that's nice there, but then here it just starts to kind of settle. So I just want to go ahead and add just a little bit more overshoot in it here, and a little bit more there as well, just a little bit. Okay, so now if we watch this, okay, so the only thing going on with it now is it feels like it holds that a little too long, doesn't it? Before it starts to settle back in. So let's go ahead and select these, and just go ahead and try to get to these poses a little earlier. And then, let's see how that's feeling. So maybe it actually needs to overshoot here a little bit. Maybe it's just getting to this point a little too early. Let's try that. Okay, so it's taking a little longer to get to here than I wanted now. So I'm just kind of shifting these around to make this work the way I want it. So I think actually what's going to have to happen is I think these are just going to have to get there a little bit earlier, and we may even have to put another little bit of a pose in here after this one. I mean, just as another tiny settle. Okay, so now if we watch this, let's see how that feels. Okay, and that makes sense, except for I think this one just needs to go a little further now. Like if it goes that far, this one doesn't go far enough after. And then we can just kind of settle back to here. And that one's maybe a little too far gone. So maybe get a little bit like that. Let's see. Yeah, it's still just kind of drifting back a little bit too much, right? So that's just taking too long. Okay, now this seems like I'm just nitpicking it, but I'm not. This is actually, I'm thinking about what causes these reactions in this animation. I think that this one kind of goes back too quickly here. So I'm actually just going to borrow like frame 72 or 73 and just make that my final frame. So I'm going to middle mouse click, drag that to the end. And so now if I watch this, Okay, so some of this is what's happening a little too early, I think. Go ahead and shift those back. Let's see that. Yeah, we see kind of here it kind of flattens out, and I think that's part of the problem is right there. Let's see how that's... So what we're going to do now is we're just going to go through here with every curve and kind of just make this work exactly the way we want it. It may just be offsetting it a little bit, and maybe overshooting it a little bit. So with this curve, maybe I want to add some keyframes after this. Again, we're just dealing with our rotate X. So what we're going to get is, again, looking at the topmost piece. Okay, and it kind of settles there. I think that's part of our problem. I think we need that to shoot over. And then as it comes back here, I think that needs to happen a little faster in its case. Something like that. And then maybe overshoot just on this last one a little bit. I'm just guessing on that one because I haven't seen it yet. Just a quick little tweak. So let's see how that's feeling. Okay. And so now we can try this to see if this is helpful at all. And just grabbing all of these controls and offsetting them by a frame. Now this may not work. In fact, this may break the entire animation and we have to undo it. But if it works, it will get us a little bit of that free overlap. But often if you build some of your overlap into the poses, this ends up being a little too much and it feels too squishy. No, it's actually feeling pretty good. And I want to stop my animation at 75, not 78. But then if we watch this, now I think there's still some timing stuff to adjust in here. It's that section there. Like that's just too long right through there. So I'm going to try this. I'm going to highlight all this, and I'm going to scale it this way a little bit. Just kind of scale that in. Maybe grab this and move it. But when I scaled all that, it snapped it to like subframes. So you'll see that's not really lining up with a whole frame number anymore. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to highlight all this, right click, and say snap, and that will snap it to a whole frame again. And so now if I watch that, it's feeling a little better. Okay, we got some pretty good overshoot and stuff. Maybe holds this a little too long before it comes back here, so I can always sort of shift some of this a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, that's feeling better. Okay, so I edited my top curve. I'm going to go down the rest of them here and just kind of look at it and see if there's anything else I could improve. So I probably could do a little bit more overshoot there. So if I go to keys, add key, a little bit like that, and then maybe even hold this one a little longer. Okay, and I could consider doing some overshoot on one of these, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to kind of let the curves do their own thing for right now. Same with this one. Yeah, so we get sort of this sharp turn, and that just feels awkward. So you know that it's changing directions kind of too quickly or too abruptly, and so I kind of like to make that feel a little bit more like a natural curve. So maybe a little bit of something like that. I'm just doing this kind of out of habit of like making these curves kind of look more fluid. If I scroll this, you'll see that as it overshoots, like here, I maybe would want that to overshoot, and I can see that because like it already starts changing directions. Maybe I don't want that to happen yet. Maybe I want this to kind of carry it on out a little bit longer. And then the same here. Maybe I want that to carry it on out a little bit longer before it kind of settles back into this. And so if we look at that now, what did that do? Really loosened up some of the end of it there. And then the last thing, I'll look at this one, and I'm pretty sure that I want the same thing here too. I want this to overshoot a little bit more, or to drag a little bit more. I feel like I did that wrong. There we go. And then there's something here that just feels awkward. So let's look at that. It's where it kind of pops up. And so we may need to go back to this one and look at that. That maybe is popping up a little too quick. Maybe that thing that we did there was wrong. Let's go and get rid of that. Maybe just sort of have this happening a little more subtly. We need that dragging a little bit more right there. So that's alright. So I can do maybe something like that. And I definitely need this one dragging a little longer. So maybe it's that I need. That's looking pretty good. Okay, so just by doing that, now it kind of looks like, I still feel like the timing-wise, it feels like it drifts back down here a little long. So I maybe would still go in here, just shift these, make it just a touch tighter. I may end up really messing some stuff up doing that, but no, that's feeling much better to me. Okay, so we got just sort of a generalized first pass on this. I mean, this is actually pretty good as the final piece. I'll probably render this out and add it in with the with one of the videos just so you can kind of see how this looks. But hopefully this this makes sense. I know there's a lot of tedious little like nitpicky stuff and maybe got a little boring to watch at times, but it really is just editing all of those little curves to make this motion happen just perfectly. So I strongly encourage you to watch all of this. So talk to you soon. Bye.